Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today is the start of a 24-hour / weekend reading vlog. I wanted to do a 24-hour readathon and I was thinking of keeping it at 24 hours. However, I do love my sleep, so I don't really want to exert myself and push myself into any sort of challenge where I am without sleep for 24 hours. So I'm thinking, since today is Friday and because Easter is on Sunday, I have today off of work, I'm thinking having less of a 24-hour readathon and more of like a weekend challenge. So I would do today and then Saturday and have, instead of just the 24 hours, just to be able to sleep and relax a little bit more, but also just kind of see how many books that I can fit within those 2 days. I thought this would be fun for a variety of reasons. Number one, I do have the day off, which is really nice. 3-day weekends are very nice and very appreciated. So I figured doing something a little special would be a fun time for me. Number two, I have a ton of library holds and I just keep getting more in. That is definitely like both the plus side and the downside of working at a library, is especially in like the position that I work in, I see all of the incoming books as they're coming into the library, and a lot that were already on my radar and that I requested myself, plus other books that I hadn't heard about or were on my radar and I'm just reading as I'm processing and deciding to check them out. So I have a ton and I definitely want to narrow it down a little bit. I have a half bookshelf over by my reading chair in my room and I have a whole shelf that's just full of library materials right now, so I want to whittle that down a little bit, as well as I am just on such a big manga kick. Manga was something that I used to read all the time as a teenager, and unfortunately I don't really even know why, but it's something that I stepped away from, I feel like, as I got older. So now I'm just like, I really want to get back into it and pick up more manga and kind of pick up where I left off. And definitely I feel like, you know, younger teen, tween to teen years, I feel like was my big heavy anime and manga phase, and I remember a lot of stuff from back then. I would love to revisit it, kind of see if my tastes are still the same, and also I do know that a lot of my reading tastes have changed overall, so they probably have in manga as well. But I decided to do kind of this reading challenge and have a lot of manga in there because over the past week or so, my family visited pretty recently and my little brother is really getting into manga, really getting into anime, and it just really inspired me to kind of pick it back up, just kind of seeing his infectious joy for that type of reading. So I went a little crazy and picked up like volume 1 of a ton different mangas that I thought I would enjoy potentially. So very much I don't want to say I'm a newcomer to the genre, but I've definitely been out of the loop since about 2007, 2008 was when I was reading a lot of manga. So for a lot of reasons, I just thought this would be a fun reading challenge just to kind of see how many materials I can absorb and read from Friday to Saturday. So here's my physical stack of books, and I do have an audiobook as well because I do want to have an audiobook, at least one, during this challenge. So when I'm walking my dog, doing dishes, doing laundry, stuff like that, I have something that I can multitask and listen to. And you know, depending on how strict that we all want to take this sort of reading challenge, I have already started my audiobook, so it's not like a full book counting towards the challenge, but it's fine. I'm going to keep reading it. I don't want to start another audiobook before I finished that one, but that would be The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu, and I am actually 49% of the way through this one, and I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely, I would say, Stranger Things meets The Golden Compass in terms of plot. I enjoy the audiobook. I highly recommend. It's about a young ghost hunter, or just a person who can see ghosts and interact with them, named Ropa, and she lives in post-apocalyptic Scotland. So that is going to be my audiobook. I feel like it's a fairly short audiobook. Again, I'm almost halfway of the way through this one and I only have 3 hours left on the audiobook. So I have a feeling that I can finish it and maybe start another audiobook. We'll see, but I'm really enjoying it. Highly recommend that one as an audiobook because it is written in first person and it has a very conversational tone. So listening to it via audiobook, I feel like the the character herself. We're just sitting down and she's telling me a story, and I find that very engaging, whereas I don't know if I would like the writing style as much if I was reading it physically. So I am enjoying that. The only other material on my TBR that is not manga so far is going to be Deadly Dreams by KJ Sutton, and this is the third book in the Fortuna Sworn series, and I read 1 and 2, I want to say in December of last year. And I have the third book, and I also have the fourth book, and I was contemplating for a little bit whether or not I wanted to continue on with the series, and so it took me a little bit to really decide if I wanted to, but the ending of book 2 made me very invested, and the reason why I feel like I was so on the fence was because these are like very fun. They're fantasy romance, and they are primarily, the first book is primarily about fairies and fae, but we get to see lots of other mythological creatures, like vampires and werewolves, and our main character is a nightmare, and she's pretty much the last of her kind. Her family was the last family of nightmares, and that is a mythological creature who can, if you touch someone, see and influence their deepest, darkest fears and what they're scared of. So yes, I really enjoy it. It's like a fun fantasy romance series. I don't want to compare it to Sarah J Maas, but I feel like that's like the most popular author in fantasy romance, but I would say this series focuses a lot more on like romance and character dynamics than actual plot. I feel like at this point in the series, the plot is definitely in the background, whereas I feel like in things like Crescent City, for example, there is a lot of romance, but there's also like a lot of engaging plot in there. Not saying that this doesn't have an engaging plot, but it's definitely like second string in the character dynamics and all of that. So the only reason why I'm going very slowly through the series is that they're very thick. They're all about 500 pages, and this is a book where it's a fun read, and I have fun reading this series, but it's not like a priority series or one where I just feel like I have to read the next book in the series. However, they are so long, and I feel like there is enough like movings and workings within the world and enough characters where I can't spend too much longer between book 2 and book 3 not reading it, because I feel like I'm just going to forget important information. So I would like to take a crack at this one. Again, 500 pages. We'll see how much of this that I can actually get done, but this is like the physical book that I'd like to read this weekend. And for the manga, very rapid fire, all of these are volume 1. And a lot of them I don't really know anything about. I was checking them out from the library based on covers and like very quick synopses, so we'll see how many of these that I end up wanting to continue the series, but figured why not, let's give them a shot. So I'll go through the first one. I didn't realize when I placed it on hold it was such a big bind up, so I probably won't read the whole thing. I'll probably only read the initial volume 1, but I do have volume 1 of Fairy Tale Masters edition. I believe this is a fantasy manga, so this one is a very large bind up. I'll only read volume 1 in it probably, and it says Masters of Magic and Mayhem. We're following a young rebellious celestial wizard with a dream to join Fairy Tale, the world's most rambunctious and powerful magical guild. So I have heard a ton about this one, intrigued to pick it up. Next up we have Bizenghast, and this one looks like it's kind of a gothic horror manga, so intrigued. And then I also have Yona of the Dawn, which I believe is kind of like a swords and sorcery high fantasy. So I'm probably getting some of these wrong in terms of synopses, but I will be getting to all of them. So by the end of this video, I'll have better little blurbs to talk about them with you. Next up, we have Psychic Academy, which to me kind of looked like a magical school setup, which I really love. So intrigued for that one. And then I have the Tarot Cafe, which also kind of seems like a little spooky magical, possibly witchy, I'm not sure. And then last but not least, we have Beasts of Abigaile, and I think this is also about an academy as well. And I want to say this is almost maybe like a werewolf sort of magical academy, I don't know. So yeah, got a lot of manga, got a lot of pages to read for this weekend. But it is 10 a.m. on Friday and I'm gonna go ahead and get this started. I'll probably go from now to, I want to say, like Saturday at midnight, or maybe just like Saturday night whenever I decide to stop reading. We'll see how many of these books that I can make my way through, but I'm going to go get reading and I will talk to you all once I have finished a book. Is 11:38 and I just finished my first book and I hated it. It's such a bad way to start this vlog. I hated it. So I started off with Psychic Academy. I probably should have looked at maybe some reviews before checking this one out, but again, it was just the premise. I saw it at the library, figured I would give it a shot. So this is supposed to be about a young boy whose brother was like the chosen one, saves the world, has amazing psychic abilities, and he doesn't think he's anything special, but he gets the call, the opportunity to go to the Psychic Academy that his brother was from. And it turns out he has psychic powers of his own and he's going to learn more about his psychic powers, hopefully like stack up to his older brother. I'm gonna be honest, this was like, there was little to no anything about the psychic powers or the school or any sort of like conflict being built up. The main thing in here is our main character has a childhood best friend who also is at the Psychic Academy, and she is grown up, as he loves to mention, and they feel an attraction towards each other. She likes him, he likes her. There's also this mysterious cool girl that he's also falling for, and she seems to like him too, so there's like a love triangle there. But this is like the most fan servicey thing that I have ever read. Like, I have read and enjoyed the occasional manga where it occasionally gets like a little male gazy. I just, especially when you're reading older stuff, some things, you know, don't age the best, and some of the art is like a little cringy, but like this is like the worst that I've ever read. There's not really any plot. It's our main character and he has this like psychic rabbit companion, and throughout the whole book this psychic rabbit is commenting on the other girls, and these are like kids, they're teens, they're underage, and this rabbit is like his master, his sensei, and is commenting very sexual things throughout the thing. He thinks sexual thoughts about both of the girls he's attracted to, which, you know, could be fine, I guess, if it's like a romance sort of thing, but there I think are like 2 or 3 moments in here where our main character falls and stumbles and accidentally falls, hands like this grab in the chest of a female character, and that is shown whenever either of the female characters are thinking about something or on their own, having their own moments, their own dialogues. They're either in the bathtub completely nude or getting dressed. It's so bad. Like, there are comments in here, again from his rabbit sensei, that is talking about if he wants to date someone, he better figure out which one he wants to date, and you want to get that cream on your cone, you best play it cool, and some like worse things in here. I don't know, it's very like not safe for work, obviously, and it just feels like a little bit gross because they're all, again, underage girls, and then you know how they have the preview of coming up next in the next volume. All we get for the next volume is yet another titty grab. So I am gonna guess that this is not actually about the school and it is more about the nudity. Also, another little note, this is a library book, and when I was reading it, there were several dog-eared pages, and they were all the pages where the girls had no clothes on. So someone enjoyed this a lot more than I did, and it's not for me. So I guess, you know, whatever. There's an audience for this, I'm sure. I'm not the audience. I thought it was quite gross. One more thing that I have to mention because I thought it was bonkers. One of our main female characters has healing powers, and her healing powers manifest tiny little naked fairies appear, and they rub themselves all over the area that needs to be healed. So, not my cup of tea. Will not be continuing on with the series. Just a real bummer. I was hoping for like a fun Psychic Academy story, like magical school setting, and instead I got just some creepy stuff. So yeah, first book done. I don't know what I'm gonna pick up next. I sure hope it can't be worse than this, but moving on to the next now. Okay, so I finished the second manga of the day. It's now 12:47, and the manga that I finished is Yona of the Dawn. This is a fantasy story, and we're following Yona, who is a princess. She is the only daughter, the only child of the king, and so she is going to ascend to the throne, and pretty much whoever she marries is going to rule once her father passes away. So she's a very pampered princess. She doesn't really want for anything, and she also has, I honestly can't tell if this is like a weird thing, but because it is a fantasy set in the past, I don't know how, like, if it's like more culturally relevant to whatever era this fantasy book's supposed to be suggesting, or if it's just like something genuinely weird. But she has a crush on her cousin, and she has this big plan that she's gonna marry her cousin, and then they're going to rule together, live happily ever after, the whole 9 yards. She also has a bodyguard that her father has hired, and that has been like her childhood friend and companion, and then bodyguard since they were both very little. Now, something terrible happens one day at the palace right after Yona's 16th birthday, and she has to flee. And she escapes the palace with her bodyguard Hawk's help. They are now both on the run, trying to survive the enemy's forces. So really, that's all this first volume was introducing us to our main characters, primarily Yona and Hawk, and really just setting up the big event at the beginning. Honestly, I think it kind of says it in the synopsis on this volume, but I don't want to give it away just because it does kind of happen like halfway through this volume. So just something bad happens and she has to flee the palace. This was entertaining. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very refreshing from the last thing I read. Pretty enjoyable, and I honestly think this was definitely one where it just sets up your characters and then kind of gives a hint at the conflict and like the story, because nothing much has really happened. The inciting incident happens and then they go on the run, but you don't really see them go on the run really in this volume, because then it like flashes back and introduces the characters more and you kind of get to know them more. So I feel like volume 2 will really be when they're on the run and moving on through the stories. So I will probably continue this series. It was fun. It was an enjoyable read. Definitely like a fun fantasy premise. I think from what I've seen, this is like a fantasy sort of romance vibe. I feel like there's definitely like a princess bodyguard sort of romance trope situation happening with Yona and Hawk. So I'm very interested, honestly, to kind of read more. Pretty short, very readable, and very easy to read. I really didn't have a hard time following it or which characters were who. So yeah, I enjoyed it. So I'm happy to report that I did enjoy this second book that I've picked up today. I did go ahead and go with this one because I have actually heard of people or like watched them on YouTube or just in my personal life have read this and enjoyed it. So that's why I went with this one, because I know at least some people that I know have enjoyed this one. And then on Storygraph, the last book that I read had like a 2-star average rating, and this one has like a 4 point something. So that's why I picked this up for my second book. So I enjoyed it, and I think I might take a quick little break from reading because I did read 2 volumes of manga pretty much back to back, but after that little break, I feel like I will get right back into it with another volume. I'm speeding through these and I am enjoying my time, especially a little bit more now that I have actually enjoyed a volume that I read. So I took a quick little break. It is 5:41 on Friday right now. I did take a little bit of a break from reading. My partner came home from work and then we ordered like a bunch of boba stuff online and that came in today. And so I was gonna say we, but it was all him, made some homemade boba and I put a little clip in here, I think, but I drank it very quickly. It was very good. So we made like this taro tea and I had like the popping bubbles in mine and then he made the brown sugar traditional boba for his. We had that as a little weekend celebration, kick off the weekend sort of thing. It's actually surprisingly easy to make if you buy the bubbles, like the fruity popping bubbles. Brown sugar boba is more time intensive, but it was really good. It's something that we like buying a lot, so we wanted to see for a while now like how hard it would be to make it at home. Obviously doesn't taste like exactly the same as like a store-bought if you go to like a specialty cafe, but it was still really, really good. So we did that, just relaxed a little bit, and I have not read any more manga yet. I did dive into Deadly Dreams and I'm not super far into it, and I probably don't know how many like updates I'll give about this because it's the third book in a series, but I did want to kind of elaborate how I said this was like a fun series for me to read. It is, I still feel that, but I don't want people going in thinking it's like very bright and cheerful and like it's not heavy, because it is, and each book I would say like gets progressively darker and some very bad things happen to like all of the main characters. So don't go in thinking that it is like fluffy fantasy romance with like happily ever afters and everything. It is darker fantasy romance. I just think fairy stories in general, and like when you're reading about vampires and werewolves and witches and fairies, all of that is like very fun reading for me. I like being immersed in worlds that have all those fantasy elements, but this is like very dark at times. And the author is really good at the beginning of each book having a list of trigger warnings in there. But I did want to make a clarification that it does get pretty dark. So I think if you've read A Court of Thorns and Roses, I would say the darkness in that is pretty much the same as the darkness of the first book. Comparably, I honestly actually do feel like they're very similar in a lot of ways when it comes to plots, or at least one aspect of the plot. But I think just the books get like progressively darker. So just a heads up, I didn't want anyone hearing me say this was fun and then pick it up and get traumatized. So that is that. And I'm definitely going to pick up another manga, I think, again, going slowly through Deadly Dreams, and it is very dark. So I have the 3 more manga. I've got the Tarot Cafe, Bizenghast, and Beasts of Abigaile. So I'm kind of debating what order I want to read them in, because I went from like an urban magical school to a high fantasy, not high fantasy, it just has like a very medieval feel. I don't know what order I'm going to read these in. However, I'll probably pick up the Tarot Cafe next. It's calling out to me. This is another one that looks very supernatural. So we're following Pamela, who's the owner of the Tarot Cafe, and she's a clairvoyant who caters to an elite clientele. So this is vampires, fairies, and other creatures that live among humans come to learn their future from the predictions of this young woman. So a little bit of supernatural in this one. I actually did notice a couple of these, how traditional manga, where you would start from what we would consider the back in America and like go that way. and read from right to left. I did notice that both the Tarot Cafe and Bizenghast both read in a traditional way for the West. I don't know if it has any sort of impact on the story or if it's just like in translation they switched the art to be read from left to right. I'm not really sure, but I think I'm going to go with the Tarot Cafe next. It's calling out to me. So yeah, I'm gonna go get some more reading done, and I will talk to y'all when I have finished another book. Hey vlog, happy Saturday. It is 3:22, and as you can see from my screen, I have been listening to a little bit of my audiobook. Definitely not a lot. It's not like a substantial update for that, but still enjoying it. So far, so good. This morning, I did manage to finish another manga volume. So I finished the Tarot Cafe Volume 1, and this is one I did enjoy it. I don't know if I'll continue on with the series, or if I do, it's not one that I will have like on my priority continuation, just because this is about a woman who can tell the future through tarot. Her clientele is not just humans, but it's also mythical creatures like fairies and vampires as well. So the setup for this is it's like a series of short stories. We follow 3 different shorter stories in this first volume primarily, and while I did enjoy it, I wouldn't say that I would even need to move on to volume 2, because again, they're all, I don't know if this changes as the series goes on, but all of these are not connected stories. They're just short stories where the thread in common is Pamela, the woman who tells the futures for these specific individuals, and then you see mostly you're following the individuals as you see their backstories as Pamela is telling them their future. I had an enjoyable time reading this one, and honestly it kind of reminded me of Pet Shop of Horrors. It has like a very similar premise almost, where that one is just a pet store owner that sends a very mythical, very interesting, not normal pet to certain individuals, and then you follow the short stories of those individual characters. So definitely I think it's interesting. I had fun reading this one, but it's one where I feel like I could not pick up volume 2 for a couple of years and be fine with it, just because at least from what I've gathered from this, there's not like a long continuous plot. It's just short story after short story. I did enjoy it though. The artwork was really nice, and there wasn't too much dialogue on each page. It was very easy to follow. This is one of the ones that I mentioned yesterday, how it starts like this is the front, and it starts from left to right instead of traditional manga, how you'd flip it and read from right to left. So just some things to keep in mind. There are several spreads where we have several different panels and there's no dialogue, so you do have to focus on the action that's happening. But I did enjoy it, and from what I can tell, this does look like a shorter series. I think there's only about 7 volumes, so I would be interested potentially in continuing on with this one. So I had a fun time reading that. And then I've also been slowly making my way through Deadly Dreams by KJ Sutton. This is definitely the darkest of this series so far. I am on page 122, and there's 506 pages in this one, so I'm enjoying it. So far, it's been like a lot of recap from the things that have happened in the last volume and just how the different characters are reacting emotionally to that. But I think at the end of the last chapter that I finished, something kind of happened that might kickstart the plot and the action that's going to happen in this one. So I'll probably keep reading this one today and see how much further I can get in it. I definitely don't think it's possible with my plans for today to finish this this one, but I guess you never know. And then right now, after I finish this update, I am going to start another manga volume. I have 3 left on my original TBR, so I am gonna go with Beasts of Abigaile. This one, I really just saw the cover. It looked intriguing and the premise looked intriguing as well. So this one, it says, Nina feels like she's entered a fairy tale after moving to the beautiful country of Riberia, but the charm wears off quick when she gets bitten by a wolf-like Luga and becomes one herself. She's soon dragged off to the penitentiary academy known as Abigaile, where young Luga learn how to serve humans. Her strong-willed attitude soon wreaks havoc on the Academy's Alpha Omega hierarchy, winning her a few friends, plenty of enemies, and maybe even a lover or two. Will Nina ever make it home, or will she remain a Luga forever? So now that I'm reading that, I am a little nervous going into this one. I really just saw like the werewolf and the academy, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe it's like a fantasy academia story, like a magical academy. Alpha Omega, not really something that I am interested in. Reading the synopsis, however, it sounds like it might be quite a bit more romance focused than fantasy focused, so I'm gonna keep my mind open, and hopefully this academy will be better than the Psychic Academy. So yeah, I'm gonna dive into this one, hopefully finish it pretty soon, and I will update you with my thoughts. I finished Beasts of Abigaile and I did really enjoy it. It was definitely what I was hoping that it would be going into it. So we follow our main character, Nina. She gets bitten by a werewolf, and she is gathered up and taken to this society penitentiary island called Abigaile, where she has to learn with the other werewolves, or Luga as they're called in this, to become perfect servants to humans. Essentially, the backstory is all of these Luga used to live in harmony on this bigger island until humans came in, took over, and kind of made them all their servants. Now, what's interesting about our main character Nina is that usually when Luga bite humans, they don't turn into Luga. So that's kind of a mystery that we're going to find out later in the series, potentially. And then also, I would say that there is like a lot of romance. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of romance just with the characters introduced. You can kind of tell that they're like what 2 love interests they're going to be, and potentially a love triangle between them. So I do think it is probably going to be pretty romance heavy as the series goes on, but also I'm very intrigued in the world building, and it kind of seems like it's going to be like an underdog fantasy revolution sort of thing, because all of these Luga just want to live their lives in peace and obviously not live lives of servitude. Every single member of this species is rounded up and taken to this penitentiary from the time that they're very young until the time that they're rehabilitated and they can go live with humans. So very interested to see where Nina's going to fit in, especially because it seems like since she was bitten and turned, and that's not like a normal thing, she probably has some bigger role to play. So I will be continuing on with this. I'm very intrigued. I really do love a good magical academy sort of feel, and even though this is a penitentiary, most of our main characters, they're all going to classes together, and there's a lot of like friendship group dynamics and obviously like mean girls, and it feels very much like a school inspired story. So if you like magical schools and you don't mind romance, this would probably be a good manga to pick up. So I'm intrigued. As you can tell by the times of my updates, this one was a fairly quick read as well. It read very easily, and it also flowed really nicely between the different sections. In here, it was just one continuous story left off on kind of a cliffhanger, obviously made me want to pick up the next volume and read more. So I did really enjoy this one. Next up, I am planning on picking up Bizenghast, and this one is kind of a fantasy, also kind of seems like horror. So this is when a young girl moves to the forgotten town of Bizenghast. She uncovers a terrifying collection of lost souls that leads her to the brink of insanity. One thing becomes painfully clear: the residents of Bizenghast are just dying to come home. So it definitely seems kind of spooky, kind of gothic. I was really intrigued by the cover on this one. This is another one that reads left to right. and it also says that this is a gothic drama, so very intrigued, going to pick this up. This is the last of the single volume mangas that I have on my TBR, and then once I'm done with that, I have Fairy Tail, this huge bind up. So yeah, I'll probably start with this, finish it off, and then once I'm done with it, move on to Fairy Tail. Alrighty friends, I am here to wrap up the vlog. I did get quite a bit of reading done this weekend, so I thought I would quickly go over everything. I know I spent the majority of my time talking about the manga, so I will kind of go over which ones I plan to continue with, which ones I'm not. I did read a little bit of Deadly Dreams. I made it about a fifth of the way through this book, so around 100 pages. I did enjoy it, just ultimately, like, this was the most, I would say, emotional book of everything that I picked up, and like the most hard-hitting and like complex in terms of story as well and world building. So I did read a good 100 or so pages of this weekend, and I did enjoy it. Will continue on reading it, obviously. That one was nice to pick up in between volumes. And then I also finished The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. This was one that I was 50% of the way through when I started the vlog, and I did end up finishing it. I had a lot of fun. I would definitely suggest the audiobook for this one because it is so conversational, and I would say I wouldn't want to compare it like completely to A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, but I know that that one is very, very popular, especially on BookTube. So I would say not the plot, not anything like that. I think they're very different books, and I do think they have a little bit of a different tone in terms of story and magic systems and all of that, but I would say the conversational tone, the tone where our protagonist is really just sitting down and talking to you, and that is how the narrative of the story goes. It's very stream of consciousness, very like informal. If you liked that in A Deadly Education, then you'll like this one as well. If you did not like that, I would hesitate to suggest this one because I realized this only after I finished my audiobook. This one, apparently, if you pick it up physically, sometimes it can be harder to tell what is in Ropa, our main protagonist's head, and what she's saying in terms of dialogue, because it's not like very differentiated between what she's saying out loud and what she's saying in her head. So I found it very easy and conversational and enjoyable to listen to. So maybe if you are interested in the premise at all, which is about a young ghost hunter in post-apocalyptic Scotland who makes her living by doing like last wishes for the dead, then I would highly recommend checking out the audiobook. I had a lot of fun. The narrator did a really good job narrating and really getting me immersed in the story. So now moving on to everything that I finished this weekend, which is rather a lot. So this one, don't worry, I only read like volume 1 of the bind up. So I did read 6 volumes of manga, and I will be continuing some, I won't be continuing others. So starting off from the very bottom of my list, obviously Psychic Academy. This has an audience, it's just definitely not me, and I really wish that the synopsis, or even maybe like a warning at least, I know it has like a rated teen, age 13 and up, but like an extra warning about the content in here because there's really not a plot. So I won't be continuing with this. It was my least favorite thing I read. Next up we have Bizenghast, which is one I don't actually think I wrapped up or talked about in this vlog. This one was just okay, and I really enjoyed the premise. I really think the cover is very striking, but the art style inside it was very confusing and like felt very unfinished at times, which is just, it's very simplistic, which is not my personal preference. Like there was a lot of things where there was just a completely blank background and you just have a character dialoguing, which is not necessarily an art style I enjoy, as well as I just felt like it was very, very choppy, and the synopsis was very confusing. I feel like this one, if you're gonna dive into it without reading the synopsis, then you'll be very confused. This one I did like a lot better than Psychic Academy, but I won't be continuing. It was just okay. More so, I think I just this one probably I had one of the highest expectations for because it was supposed to be like a gothic portal fantasy, and it just didn't hit that mark for me. And art style, especially in manga, obviously since it is such a visual medium, is very important for me. So I will not be continuing with this one, but this is one that I would recommend if you like the art style. And I'll kind of show, like, this is just kind of what I mean, like the black backgrounds are very blank, and then some of the characters don't exactly match up style-wise with the rest of it. So for me, just like not a very cohesive style of art, but I feel like if you are interested in the art, the story could be cool. I just won't be continuing. Next up, we have Fairy Tail. This is one that's landing on the middle of the list because the art style, honestly, is not as bad for me as Bizenghast. So it's something that, well, I really actively did not like the art style in Bizenghast. This, just like a couple of choices of like facial expressions and like very overly exaggerated facial expressions, I just didn't care for. This one I did think was better overall than Bizenghast, had a more entertaining story, and I was interested in where the story was going. However, this one out of all of them, I would say, is the one that I've forgotten the most about since I read these a couple days ago. So for me, knowing that this is a very, very long series and I felt just kind of mediocre about the art style, and then it was just a very forgettable first volume for me, even though I know this one has such a following and has such potential, I'm not going to pick this up ever again, but it's not going to be a priority, and I probably would have to hear so much hype for it before picking it up. So this one was just okay. Next up, we have the Tarot Cafe, and this one had a very interesting art style, and I will be continuing. However, I'm not rushing to pick up the next installation because this is a series of short stories, so none of the stories are connected. If I move on to volume 2, nothing in volume 2 will be connected to volume 1, at least not that I think. It's just a bunch of shorter narratives, but I did really enjoy the premise of having like this witch, this all-knowing woman who can tell the future through tarot cards. I thought that was really cool. The writing style was really cool, so I will probably be continuing on with this one, as well as I think this one is only 4 volumes, so definitely not like a huge time commitment. So I'll probably be continuing on with this one, just not like on my priority list of things to pick up, but absolutely I'll be reaching for this again sometime. Next up, getting to the highest tier, or at least the 2 that made it to the highest tier for me, we have Yona of the Dawn. I really enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun. The art style is very reminiscent of a lot of manga and anime that I really enjoy, so the familiarity of the art style is really great for me, as well as there's a lot of fantasy tropes in here that I just tend to really enjoy no matter the medium of storytelling. So I am very intrigued. This one was a lot of character building and not a lot of plot, so I'm like very invested to see where the story goes. I probably will be picking up volume 2 very soon. I've heard wonderful things about this one, and I'm very intrigued to see where the story goes, and I really thought this one had the most character development, or the most intriguing characters for sure. And then last but not least, probably like one of the most surprising, because I was guessing that Yona of the Dawn would have been up at the top of my list, so that wasn't really a surprise, but Beast of Abigaile definitely a surprise for me. This one was just very, very fun. I almost kind of liken it to, and it's been such a long time since I read this series, but Tokyo Mew Mew, I really enjoyed that, and like the art style in here very much reminded me of that, where you do have mostly human creatures, I guess, because these aren't technically humans, they're a different species, but you'd have like the magical girl anime sort of feel, but then when they would transform, they would have different superpowers of endangered animals, and then in this one it's following Luga, which are like werewolves almost. This one was just a lot of fun, very like light academia hijinks, with a fantasy plot, with some fantasy tropes that I really enjoy. So this one was very fun, very engaging. Definitely I would say the one where probably Yona of the Dawn will rank higher overall when I finish both series. This one I just like want to race through, read it. I think this is a shorter series as well, but this is like a lot of fun and exactly like what I'm looking for when I'm picking up very short manga to enjoy. So there you have it, quite a successful few days of reading for me. Had a lot of fun. If you have any suggestions for manga for me to check out, definitely leave them down below. I would definitely love to hear suggestions from you, but if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for more content from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!